Do you think what social media is doing is speeding that up and making it easier? Right?
Yeah,
because
I do.
it's not that easy if you're a bully, let's say, ideologically committed to bully, to actually find people and bully them.
Yeah.
But online you can do that because it's so efficient. You can do that extremely quickly and with very many people. And you can unite, that's the other thing, is you can unite fanatics, even if they're rare statistically. So, you know, in a small town, maybe you could find 2 fanatics and what the hell are they going to do? But online, well, then there's a group. And then that would also mean that the fanatics are more likely to overestimate how popular their ideas actually are, because there's a biased sampling issue, for example, we'll say.
Yeah, but also fanatics can attract quite large followings on social media, and particularly if they focus on one issue. So a very, very effective strategy for being an activist on social media, using social media as one of your main or your main tool of engagement, is to just pick one issue and focus on it and just repeat it over and over and over again. And that is, I mean, I'm not saying all activism is bad by any means, but it can create a community that can become fanatical, basically, which is a danger.
I'm not so sure that activism isn't just bad
altogether.
You know, well, it obviously, the idea that you need to pay attention to your institutions and that sometimes they need criticism and reform. It's like, obviously, institutions ossify, and they become corrupt, and everyone has to be alert to that. And there are steps you can and should take and are morally obligated, I think, to take.
Yes.
But the thing about activism is that it's almost always predicated on the idea that you're right, you're morally superior, and you've identified the people who are wrong. And to me, that's one step away from mob, and it's one step away from punishment. And one of the things that appalls me and makes me ashamed in relationship to the universities is that universities are pretty good at teaching young people that being an activist is a good thing. And I'm not so sure at all that it's a good thing. I think it's pseudo responsibility, especially because it always comes with the easy identification of just who the enemy is.
That's exactly right. No, I think you're right. And I think that if you're going to attack, if you're going to be on the attack, you have to also build. It's your responsibility and it's your duty to build. So
you built an alternative. That's what you did.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you're going to attack our institutions, you know, I have a lot of problems with establishment institutions, but you can't just attack them. What are we going to have left when we've got no institutions? We've got to have new institutions. We've got to start building them now.
Well, we could have rubble and everyone could be equal in the rubble. That's happened many, many, many times.
And that's the risk. That's the risk, and that's, you know, that's why I think attacking institutions has to go hand in hand with building new ones. And lots of people, you know, I know quite a few people who are trying to build new institutions, but I agree that there's something about social media and social media enabled activism that makes finding an outgroup, dehumanizing the outgroup and attacking them very easy.
Well, okay, let's dive into that for a minute. Okay, so how many times have you sworn at somebody when you're walking down the street versus how many times have you sworn at someone when you're in your car and they're in their car?
I don't think I've sworn at anyone ever.
Okay,
in that manner.
Well, then you're much more polite than me, let's say. But it's much more probable when there's a barrier like that, that people will manifest aggressive behavior. You know, we don't know exactly what inhibits aggressive behavior, but one thing that does is rather close personal proximity, real proximity. Now, when you take the person and you place them in a shell, let's say that's a car, you place yourself in a shell, well, all of those cues, those subtle and complex cues aren't there. And so online, well, you don't even have an avatar. you only have your hypothetical fantasy about the person that you're attacking. You don't even know them.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that does to people at all. I mean, we see some of that on Twitter, and we have no idea if this hypothesis that you laid out is true, if there's a tendency for those who are more committed to dominate certain types of institutions because the moderates bail out. And then if it's also true that that's sped along by social media, which is a possibility, not a certainty, but it could be. And then it's also easier to dehumanize people in social media circles, particularly if you're so inclined, and maybe even if you're not, then, well, that can be a perfect storm.